What's up, YouTube? It's Brick MMA back. Finally back after a long time, guys. I've been super busy. I've started another semester of classes in the summer. So I've only had like a 2-day break in between the start times, the end and start times of the sessions. But I didn't get the chance to release a video for my reaction to Derek Lewis's card because, again, like I said, I'm very busy with school, and this is one of those videos I have to try and rush to make. So I'm gonna try and not take up too much time like I usually do. Right, but first things first, I wanted to say about the Derek Lewis card. It was alright. Actually, I think it was just as good as I thought it would be. I knew we were gonna get some finishes on the card because we had. It was a solid card, honestly, for a fight night. I'm glad Derek Lewis won. I told y'all what happened. I'm very upset that Wonder Boy lost. Steve Garcia, shout out him, and I mean, I guess that's all I can really remember. Oh, the pirate fight with Charrier versus Nate the Train, and yeah, that's I'm kind of just speedrunning that, like off top of my dome. But we are back to make my predictions to UFC 318 Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier, the trilogy for the BMF belt. Now, y'all know who I am, so I'm gonna start with the first fight of the card. Starting off the card, we have Carly Judas versus Nicole Cagliari. Let me see. I'm gonna just go based off looks here. Carly Judas looks like she beats bitches up. I ain't gonna lie. Nicole Cagliari looks like all these fighting earnings go straight into Botox. So, I don't know much about either fighters. I gotta make this one raw dog because I have no time. Otherwise, I just won't be able to release a video. So I'm going to go with Carly Judas by decision. Next up, we had Bruno Ferreira versus Jackson McVee. He's making his debut from the amateurs. He is undefeated, but I am kind of high on Bruno Ferreira. I think he's pretty solid, and I think he has the potential to be really good. So I'm pretty sure he's the favorite on the books too, like in betting odds. I think he's the favorite. So I'm gonna go with Bruno Ferreira, with I think a possible KO, but I'd be interested to see in what Jackson McVee does. Next we have Ryan Spann versus Lucas Brzeski. I'm gonna go with Ryan Spann. Brzeski has not won a single fight in the UFC so far. I think he's like 0-4, 0-5 in the UFC. Yeah, that's not, like in no world would I ever pick you to win a fight. Especially not versus Ryan Spann. I'm going with Ryan Spann. Probably by KO as well. Next up we have Jimmy Crute versus Marcin Prachnio. I like Prachnio. I remember his fight with Bukowskis. It was alright. He seems to be a solid fighter. He is a little on the older side though. He is pretty durable. And I not much like I said about that. But with Jimmy Crute, younger, I'm pretty sure. I think that's the right guy, right? So let me see his record. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. Bellotto, that's not that great. Lost to Moneyfield. Wow, neither of them are that great. Is he? Oh, he's also 0-3 right now. Jesus Christ. But he's beat Bukowskis. So you know what? But MMA math don't work. You know what? I think I might go with Prachnio, to be honest. I kind of like Prachnio a little bit more. I think he was doing pretty solid with Bukowskis up until I'm pretty sure this is gonna be like the underdog bet. But I I'm gonna go Pragnow. Who knows? He might get a KO. And then headlining or to end the early prelims, we have Adam Fuggett versus Islam Dulatov, the model. If y'all didn't know that, which I'm pretty sure everybody does know about him. I'm gonna go with Islam Dulatov. Adam Fuggett is also on a pretty major losing streak. A lot of the fighters on this card actually are, right? Like even in the next one, Robert Valentin. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Islam Dulatov. He's probably gonna get the finish. I think in a probable submission in round 2 or 3. Yeah, around there. And then starting the prelims, we have this is a pretty big card, low key. There's a lot of fights on it. Atiba Gautier versus Robert Valentin. I'm going Gautier. I do like what I have seen from him so far. I am not super high on him as to say I think he's like, the next Ngannou, even though he is fucking huge, right? And he does have good solid striking and good power. And which is, those are the reasons why I'm picking him, right? He's younger, he's hungrier. He's undefeated as well, I believe, right? Let's double check that. I was 7-1. Well, he's been, he has a very good record. He's on a very good streak. And Valentin is on the other end of that. He lost to Torres Finney. Right. Guys, Torres Finney isn't that good either. Right, I know he's like part of the memes and shit, but he isn't really that good. So yeah, I'm going Gautier. And then next up we have Francisco Prado versus Nikolay Veretinikov. Veretinikov. Oh my god, I can't say that word. What the fuck? Veretinikov. Oh, I see. Nikolay Veretinikov. Okay. So again, both of these fighters are also on major losing streaks. No. Okay, yeah, I'm doing terrible right now. Yeah, so he was undefeated coming in. Beat Jamie Malarkey, but who doesn't? Beat Izatar. Lost to Zoe Huber, which isn't a bad win. Bad loss. And lost to Jake Matthews. That's also not a bad loss. Right? So he's so far 2-2 in the UFC, which is pretty solid. And then I'm guessing this was a draw in a contest, and he lost to Vanderford. That's pretty interesting now. Who am I gonna pick? You know what? I always root for strongest resume. And his 2 wins and 2 losses. The wins aren't as great, but the 2 losses and going to decision with those guys, especially nowadays, that's very that looks solid. It's like an acceptable loss. Like that was like they're solid competition now, right? So I think I'm gonna go with Francisco Prado. I don't think this is gonna be one of those fights that ends early on the card. This is probably gonna be those drawn out ones. So I'm probably expecting this to go all 3 rounds. And Veretinikov probably isn't like a major slouch. He might take 1 round off of Prado, but I think I'm gonna go with Prado. 29-28 decision. And then it's not even headlining the prelims. And then we're gonna have to make a cut. Back. Okay. Marvin Vettori versus Brendan Allen. I don't. Man. I know Marvin Vettori recently lost his brother, I believe. And he's dedicating the fight to him. But I think mentally he hasn't came into his. He hasn't came in. Yeah. He didn't bring to his last fights the proper mentality. Right? That's what I'm trying to say. For a while now, he's been talking about retirement being soon and looking for guys to beat him and such. And like him also being on a losing streak now, that also probably isn't gonna do him any good mentally. This is kind of the same logic with like Calvin Kattar, you know. Vettori physically can keep up with any middleweight, but I just think he's again like he's on these downward slopes in his career, right? And Brendan Allen is he's doing pretty solid right now. You know, he recently coming off a loss to Fluffy, but I think Brendan Allen's style and well-roundedness is gonna be too much for Vettori. You know, Vettori isn't a great striker. He's more suitably called a grappler, but his grappling isn't that great because he has no finishing potential. Brendan Allen, he's gonna neutralize or even advance and attack Vettori with the grappling and with the striking. You know, Brendan Allen's solid, you know, but I just think he has the grappling advantage, and I think most of the fight is gonna be spent in scrambles or like in the clinch, and you know, not much is gonna take place on the feet. So nothing significant, especially with like Vettori, who has solid power, but it's not gonna do him any well because he isn't really technically that great at striking either, and he's very open to getting hit. So it's gonna be easy for Allen to score those points on Vettori. So I'm gonna go with Brendan Allen. I don't think he's gonna finish Vettori. A lot of people can't. He's especially not gonna knock him out. If of all people, Brendan Allen is not knocking out Vettori. Like, if there was a 1 in 10 chance that Vettori was gonna get knocked out by somebody, it would have already happened, right? To the people he fought, it's not happening to Brendan Allen. So yeah, I'm going Brendan Allen by decision, 30-27. And then to headline the prelims, we have Kyler Phillips versus Vinicius Oliveira. This fight is kind of interesting because Kyler Phillips's resume isn't great, in my opinion, because his only good recent win was versus Raoni Barcelos, right? And then look, right, we'll look at it together. He beat Munoz, which is okay, right? But I think the best aged and current win is gonna be looked at as Barcelos, right? And then recently lost to Rob Font, which that's not that big of a deal because Rob Font is still pretty solid at his age, right? But it kind of shows that Kyler Phillips maybe isn't talented enough to get over that hump of Rob Font, right? And that doesn't make him trash. But if we look at Vinicius Oliveira's resume, he beat Ricky Simon, right? And he beat Said Nurmagomedov. Now, he isn't really that great either, but he showed out very well in that fight. Before like the gassing out from both of them and such, Said was doing very well. It was like 1-1 going into the third. And then a Ricky Simon win is always going to look great on a resume. And then we all know about this insane highlight KO he had in his debut. So him being on a 3-fight win streak, I think, and just overall skill wise, like if we go skill for skill, like in striking and such, I believe Vinicius Oliveira has more finishing potential. I think he has more power. He's craftier. He's more willing to throw out these high risk, high reward shots, which I think they could pay off. Now, this could easily turn into like one of those like pretty boring masterful like striking exchanges from like range and such. If Kyler Phillips manages to impose his will and do that onto Vinicius Oliveira. But Vinicius Oliveira isn't somebody. He's like one of these fighters that he does that to people, right? He imposes his will on people, and even if he feels like the fight is losing sight of a win from him, he's still going to fight in his same style, right? And I think if he takes a more aggressive approach, he can absolutely beat Kyler Phillips. So I'm gonna go with Vinicius Oliveira. I can't say for certain if he's gonna get a KO, but I do think he will get the win. So I'm going with Vinicius Oliveira. And then now we get to the main card. Starting off the main card, we have Michael Johnson versus Daniel Zellhuber. This is pretty easy, for me at least. I'm going Daniel Zellhuber. Michael Johnson is still super fast. He still has great boxing. You know, he's one of these all-time ageless vets, right? But I don't see him knocking out Daniel Zellhuber. Zellhuber has a chin, an insane chin. I'm pretty sure. Like, let's look at this. I'm pretty sure. Right, I'm pretty sure he's taller, 4 inches more in reach. Right, and even if we look at significant strikes, 6 to 4 landed per minute, and then absorbed 6. Okay, all right. Zellhuber gets hit a lot, but even if we think about it, that this is probably boosted from just the fight he had with Hibovics, right? And even then, in that fight with Hibovics, I think he absorbed some very powerful strikes that maybe would have knocked out other people. How do I say this? I think if Michael Johnson was in that same position, I don't think anything more damaging happens to Daniel Zellhuber. I don't think he wears any more damage on his face. I don't know if he would absorb as much impact. Like, I'm trying to say, Michael Johnson just isn't going to hit anything harder than what Hibovics was hitting him with. Right? It wouldn't be any different. So I'm thinking Zellhuber, and even Zellhuber was competing with Hibovics up until that third round. I believe he had won the first and the second. So Hibovics winning the third was kind of surprising to me. But I think Zellhuber is extremely talented, and especially in this stage of their careers, Zellhuber is in a level above Michael Johnson. I'm not gonna say he like completely like peaks him, but he's on a different trajectory, as they all say. But yeah, I'm going Daniel Zellhuber and possible KO as well. Probably a little bit early, like in the second round. And now we move on to Dan Ige versus Patricio Pitbull. First, I want to start off by saying, guys, I like Dan Ige, right? And Dan Ige, we all know, is no slouch. But Patricio Pitbull isn't either. I did say, excuse me, I got a burp. Sorry. Patricio Pitbull isn't either. And I said in one of my last videos, about him, I don't know if he was top 5 level at featherweight. But I think he can beat a lot of people within the rankings. And I looked at Dan Ige, and this is one of those beatable fights for him, or winnable fights for him. And, you know, I know Dan Ige has never been submitted, and he has never been finished. But you know, I think Patricio Pitbull actually has a lot of finishing potential. He isn't in his prime anymore. We all know that. But in terms of like where he is at now in his age and his career, he's still very physically fit and he's still very physically able. Um he I'm pretty sure he still carries some punch, but I don't think he's going to win by a KO, right? Um I'm sure he has power and such, but Dan Ige is pretty solid in the chin, right? I think Patricio Pitbull is going to out grapple Dan Ige, um, taking his back, keeping um, controlling him for like 2 minutes, 3 minutes on in the round on the ground. But I think Pitbull has enough IQ in the grappling to be able to submit a Dan Ige. You know what I'm saying? Dan Ige he's very solid all around. He just doesn't excel at anything too crazy. I think Pitbull is one of those guys that I believe in his experience and his championship experience that he can get it done over somebody very tough like Dan Ige. So I'm going with Pitbull, probably by submission somewhere in the fight. I can't tell you where. Maybe in the later round, but I don't know. I'm going Patricio Pitbull. And then we have Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez, D-Rod. I like D-Rod, and honestly, I'd probably be rooting for him. But there is no way that I think D-Rod beats Kevin Holland. I think Kevin Holland wins this fight in any shape, way, or form that he wants to. I believe, though, D-Rod isn't much of a grappler. And Holland isn't necessarily one to force a grappling exchange unless you are. Right? He kind of more does it to like, here, look, I can grapple too. You know? Like, let me show you what I could do since you want to do this. He's more likely to keep it on the feet. And D-Rod is pretty old. He's like 38, 39 or something. And Holland is kind of hitting like the prime of his career right now. He's like 34. Sorry, no, he's like 32 or something. He's 32, right? And he's still very talented, and he still has a lot of potential and room for him to grow. And just currently, we all know Kevin Holland has great finishing potential and submissions and knockout power, and that's exactly why I'm picking him. He has more reach. He's so much more physically imposing than Daniel Rodriguez, and has every tool in his kit to finish Daniel Rodriguez. So I'm going with Kevin Holland by KO in the first round. Next up, we have Paulo Costa versus Roman Kopylov in the co-main event of this card. Now, speaking of finishing potential, right? I'm kind of going Paulo Costa. I don't think that's a hot take. Paulo Costa has only fought, for the most part, high level of competition, right? And if you look at his losses, he lost to Whitaker, went 3 rounds. And, you know what? I'd probably say this one was probably like a worser example to use, probably. Because he was kind of given no chance in this fight. But in Strickland versus Strickland, he definitely had better moments over a tricky and tough opponent like Sean Strickland. And having fought a Luke Rockhold as well, and Israel Adesanya, I think his IQ for the striking exchanges and like just experiencing some of the best strikers in that division's history, I don't think he's gonna be surprised or be unable to handle anything that Roman Kopylov has for him. And I like Kopylov, right? I do think he's a solid fighter at the moment, but I don't know how durable he is. And both of them have the tendency to get hit, and I think if one is gonna eat a punch better, I think it's Paulo Costa, and the person I think is gonna give the better punch is also Paulo Costa. And he said, yeah, he's coming with his old mentality of just this pure, like, this aggression that he's willing to take a punch to give the punch. And if he's actually gonna fight like that, not try to and just be caught like at Kopylov's range, then yeah, I definitely see Paulo Costa winning by KO somewhere in the fight. So and also as kind of like a Paulo Costa fan, I would want to see him win. I think this is his most winnable fight he's gotten. Right, when he got the fight versus Whitaker, I knew he was gonna lose. The fight versus Strickland, I knew he was gonna lose. But and also him being dropped down to number 13 is also kind of crazy. But I believe in Paulo Costa still. But if he loses this one, that's it for me. I'm jumping ship. So yeah, I'm going Paulo Costa by KO in this fight. And now for the main event, Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier. Brother, man, I love both of these fighters, right? And there's a couple things we have to be made aware of. Dustin has never lost 2 in a row. And as we can see, his last fight was a loss. But Dustin has also never, ever won an undisputed title fight. Right? He's 0-3, undisputed lightweight. And he's 0-1 for undisputed BMF. But he's also 2-0 over Max Holloway. Right? So I don't like you gotta think what is stronger. Like what is the strongest magic force Dustin Poirier has right now? Winning a title fight or losing 2 in a row? You know what I'm saying? Or never losing 2 in a row. So this might be one of those things where they cancel out and we get a draw. And you know what? That would be the absolute best outcome. But realistically, we know that's not going to happen. So, in terms of skill and where they are in their careers right now, this is always going to be kind of confusing. Or no, sorry, not confusing. It's always going to be kind of iffy, kind of questionable, because Max Holloway, as we've seen, can get better, can change his style, but I think what we've seen so far from Max is that he can still very much, he's still so hittable, and going up into a weight class where people hit even harder again is, I don't know. And him coming off of a loss from what looks to be still one of the hardest hitters in the UFC, Ilia Topuria. I don't think his chin is going to be damaged. I don't think it's going to be damaged goods. But I also don't think that I don't think he's going to lose as badly. Right? I think I'm going to just cut it short there. I'm going to say he's not going to lose as badly. Maybe if he incorporated a more Muay Thai style, like he did versus Ilya, and he was having some success with it, but in the same sense, I don't know if he can't really have that style with Dustin Poirier as successfully. So like Dustin is kind of one of these guys that he's Max's worst matchup. Like if we look at the reasons why Max lost to Volk, is because for one, it's kind of harder hitting a shorter fighter. For someone like Max, like a much shorter fighter, but with someone with more reach, right? And Volk had a 72-inch or 71-inch reach advantage over Max, similar to Dustin Poirier, right? But Dustin Poirier is kind of taller, so it's going to be easier for Max to hit him. Yeah, but Max doesn't hit as hard as people that Dustin is eating shots from, right? He's going to hit a little harder because I think this is a better version of Max Holloway than we saw in the last one. And, Dustin still absorbed a lot of damage in that one. But Dustin also hits a lot harder than Volkanovski. So I can't. It's hard. I don't want to say I believe Dustin is gonna knock him out, but I think it's very doable still. I think we could see Max Holloway on a 2-loss KO streak. That is very, very possible. And some people would pick against Dustin Poirier because it's his retirement fight, but he also seems to be taking it very seriously. He looks in amazing shape. Like I saw one of the Instagram videos they posted of him for the posing and shit. And even before I opened the comments, I was like, bro, he looks fucking lean. I was like, bro, he looks good. Pause. You know what? No pause. This is my king, Dustin Poirier. So there is some slight bias in this, okay? But Dustin looks very good for his last fight. He's even sober. So he's even sobered up now for this fight. It's his hometown. He's gonna get walked up by Little Wayne. Guys, come on. There is no way Dustin Poirier is gonna lose. He's gonna have Theo Von in his corner, tell him no fucking way you're gonna lose in your hometown, right? Sorry. Yeah, I believe Dustin is gonna beat Max, and it sucks because I also don't want to see Max Holloway lose, or to see him go on a 2 KO loss streak, right? Because then I think he's gonna end up like the BJ Penn route, man. I think at that point he's gonna just kind of associate like himself with just getting hurt now, or like even if he like physically isn't like weak, like with his chin, he might just kind of put that in his head, like, is it gone now? Like just that question itself is gonna make his chin a lot weaker, because it's kind of like a mental thing sometimes with your chin. Yeah, I think Dustin Poirier is going to be able to box with Max in the pocket, and he's going to be able to keep him at range and get the better of him at range, actually, too, while still putting out a lot of solid damage onto Dustin. Because Dustin, he has a lot of sting in his shots from anything that you get hit with, right? His hooks are lethal. And, we did just see Ilia Topuria knock Max with a hook. That the game plan that Ilia had leading up to the knockout was or like what he was doing to set up the knockout was crazy. And I think Dustin Poirier could absolutely do and hit something similar, because Max Holloway is so hittable, and he kind of just he retains these bad habits from what he does over the years. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, Ilia was pawing at the jab of Max Holloway. And then because Max was like, I think he was trying to loop overhands. So then Ilia was trying to paw at it to I guess like to like parry, right? Or to like put it out there like that he's gonna start parrying and shit. And then he Max Holloway went for or like went to touch or like he extended his left arm, and then Ilya parried it down, stepped in, then hit him with that hook that we all saw that dropped him. And then, that's when he landed the ground and pound shots and such. So, I think Dustin Poirier could implement this from even farther range. Right? And being able to do that from an even greater range is going to be an even greater risk for someone like Max Holloway. Man, it really sucks. It really sucks to say this, but I kind of don't see any way for Max Holloway to win right now. And I don't know. It seems to be he's kind of the favorite. No. He's the underdog? Yeah. I mean, it makes sense because he's 0-2 against Dustin Poirier. So it's not like a hot take that I think Dustin Poirier is going to win. But, I think he's going to get his victory sent off. Right? It's very unfortunate to see one of my favorite fighters, Dustin Poirier, retire. But he's gonna forever be a legend in the sport, and it's gonna be something I'm not looking forward to see. To be honest, I kind of am, but I'm not at the same time. It's very bittersweet. It's gonna be very bittersweet watching the fight happen as well. But yeah, so I'm gonna go with Dustin Poirier to win, probably by a decision, or like I said, he could get a KO as well. But comment, subscribe. Y'all let me know y'all thoughts in the comments below. And yeah, that's it.